Welcome to the July 29 Personnel Committee of Glynn County Board of Commissioners. Number one, approval of the meeting minutes of June 10. Laura, was there anything of concern to you there?
No, sir.
You know, the only thing that I saw, which is interesting, is that agenda item number 4, consider authorizing the reorganization of county departments and reclassification of department head positions, was discussed rather extensively last month, and here we are again. So can I have a motion to accept the minutes? Any issues you had?
I didn't have any.
Okay.
Motion to accept minutes.
I second that. All in favor? Okay. Number 2, the aforementioned consider authorizing the reorganization of county departments and the reclassification of department head positions. Mr. Howers.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I believe that this item is back before you because at the meeting about a week and a half ago, the board referred it back to the Personnel Committee. I'm going to pass out to you. Try to provide some additional information as we start the discussion. Just a little bit of background. Earlier this year, around the January timeframe, Tanya Miller, who is Director of Administrative Services, resigned to accept a position as City Manager for Waycross, Georgia. And the Director of Administrative Services position had 3 main responsibilities. 1, to serve as Chief Financial Officer. Number 2, to provide direction and oversight to Human Resources. And number 3, provide direction and oversight to Information Technology. That was put in place in 2015 when the board reorganized county departments. So between 2015, the summer, when that reorganization took place, and January of 2019, about 3.5 years, we had an opportunity to see how that worked. And in my opinion, I believe the Chief Financial Officer should have their focus on the finances of the county and not necessarily having to supervise 2 other departments of the county. With the $130 million budget and with the fund accounting that governments have, that we have several funds that have to be managed. We have grants, we have purchasing, we have accounts receivable, we have accounts payable, we have payroll, and several other components in the finance office. And I believe that we're better suited as an organization for the CFO, for their sole focus to be on finances. So of the 3 organizational, of the handouts to you, there are 3 organizational charts. The first organizational chart is as organization currently exists. If you look at the top line, that pretty much comprises the elected officials. If you look at the second or middle line, you have the planning commissions, the tax assessors, county attorney, and the county manager. And so underneath the county manager, currently you have the assistant county manager, the director of community development, the director of public works, the director of administrative services and CFO, the police chief, the fire chief, and the director of EMA, and Homeland Security. So that's how we're currently set up, and this was, again, reorganized in 2015. The second organizational chart is what I recommended to the board when this first came up, I guess back in June. And the change here would be for the current recreation manager, who would continue to report to the assistant county manager. For that title to be changed to director of recreation. For the human resources manager, for that title to be changed to director of human resources. And the director of information technology, for that, for the manager of information technology, for that title to be changed to director of information technology. And this would change the reporting from the director of, for the HR and IT, to report directly to the county manager rather than to the director of administrative services, and would provide for the chief finance officer position and have them report to the county manager as well. The third organizational chart was something that Commissioner Neal and Commissioner Glynn asked me to look at, and they asked how it would line up if the HR manager and IT manager reported to the assistant county manager, and would that impact the proposed grade changes. And so Ms. Reed asked our consultant to look at it, and the consultant with Archer Company reviewed this particular lineup. And for each position, there are points assigned to each position. And after review, the consultant said that it would not change the grade lineup. So there's no difference in the consultant's mind with the recommended grades, whether these positions report to the assistant county manager or to the county manager. The grades are the same. In terms of the, we basically have three options. One option is to leave things as they are, continue to have the director of administrative services with the duties as I mentioned earlier under that person. The other option is to create the CFO position and have the IT manager, HR manager become HR director and IT director and report to the county manager. And then the third option is to have those two report to the assistant county manager. I believe within the next year, the current IT manager is going to retire and do something different. Whenever that happens, I believe our best opportunity to recruit a new professional for that position, I think that the fact that position will be IT director carries more weight in our ability to recruit the professional that we need for that department than IT manager would. So as we look ahead to the future, not only are we trying to address the current issue with the CFO, but we're also trying to look ahead as things may transition in the next year or two. And I believe when they do transition and when that change is made, that our ability to recruit the person with the qualifications we need, the IT director, is going to become important. Since early 2000s, I think around 2002, the county has used Archer Consulting Services. Archer, back in the 80s, Dr. Archer was a college professor. He had developed the Archer pay classification compensation system, and Glynn County adopted that in the early 2000s, and we've used it ever since. That system has a pay structure, it has pay grades, it has pay ranges. For each grade, there is a range spread, there's a midpoint, there's a minimum, and there's a maximum. The consultants will tell you, whether it's Archer or other HR professionals, they will tell you that an organization is most competitive when employees are paid at the midpoint. And our goal is to try to get employees to the midpoint as soon as we can. We try to move the ranges up each year with a COLA, with a merit increase, with career track increase. We try to move the grades up. This year in the budget, we did budget for this change. Unfortunately, the consultant, he's one for Georgia. I'm not sure if he has other states or not, but he's one for Georgia, and so his plate's full, and he's not the quickest to get back to you. So it took him a while. My ultimate goal would have been to have this to you as part of your budget discussions, but we just didn't have the information. But we did anticipate it, and so the funding is in the budget. So it's not an issue of funds not being available for the change. He looked at this organizational chart. If the positions change, how would it impact it? Ms. Reed also had each of the positions affected fill out a new position questionnaire to see if their job duties and responsibilities had changed and whether or not that had any type of impact. Their job duties, responsibilities may have changed a little bit, but not really. So the total impact is how the positions are aligned. Who reports to who does matter in our class and comp structure. Now there have been some news articles, there's been some conversation on social media, there have been some emails about this particular proposal. Well, I would suggest to you that if it had to do with any other part of our organization, the potential impact would have been the same. Because, this impact, the reclassifications are related to department head positions, but every year we have the potential for reclassifications of other positions. This year we had 8. Last year we had 7. In addition, this year we had 170 career track positions, which means, I'll just use an example, police officer 1 can move to police officer 2 if they have the experience and certain training. So we have several employees that move each year in career track. A few years ago, in 2015, when the first reorganization took place, some pay adjustments took place then. The community development director at the time, Mr. Hamlin, is no longer here, but there was a pay adjustment for him because he changed grades. Public Works director changed grades. However, at that time, the HR, Ms. Reed was HR director, Mr. Catron was IT director, and they were their title was changed to HR manager and IT manager. We have a total of 38 pay grades, and there's 60% range spread for all the pay ranges and grades. We have 151 classification titles. For example, even though we have over 100 police officers, a police officer is just one title, classification title. We have 38 career tracks. We have 771 employees included in our grade system, and that does not include the airport, the tax commissioner's office, and the district attorney's office. The average age of our employees is 43.02 years. The average service time is 9.17 years. The average annualized base rate is $44,202. And on the average, 0.92 of all positions are within the grade structure. Again, midpoint being 1. If you look at our system more closely, individuals with more years of service are above the midpoint. There are 355 employees in non-public safety positions, and their average comp ratio is 0.9599. And the average age is 47.39 years, and the average service time is 10.35 years. So, as you can see, our our class and comp system, it is complex. There's a rationale to it. It's it's been proven in court. So it's a sound system. And when we make changes, we go to our consultant. My original goal was to create the CFO position and not have the Director of Administrative Services anymore. Again, because I believe the CFO, their total focus should be on financial issues and not other issues. That was the goal. I didn't set out to increase the pay for all department head positions. But we asked our consultant, how does this affect everybody? And so the consultant's recommendation is what we took and presented to you. And the total impact to the budget is $51,600. However, the individual pay increases is $43,900. The $51,600 includes the cost of FICA and pension, which is a cost you have to consider. The average increase is from $4,000 to a maximum of $5,800 for the leadership positions. So hopefully that's provided you with some additional information on the recommendation that's before you. And my recommendation is to continue with my original recommendation, and that's to create the CFO position and reclassify the department heads as recommended by the HR consultant. And with that, I'll stop and answer any questions that you may have.
All right, that was an excellent presentation, Mr. Hours. But let's go through this in an organized fashion. So we've got two issues before us. We've got reorganization issues and we got reclassification issues. So let's start with the reorganization. So that was put first. So Mr. Hours was saying that he felt that the chief financial officer should have total focus on financial issues and remove IT and HR from reporting through the newly described CFO position. I find that reasonable. What do you two feel? Do you have any issue with that? I mean, our county budget's growing, our numbers are growing, the complexity, the financial issues are growing.
I agree with that aspect of it.
We just need to be dead on the certainty of the financial reports we see and the numbers we're dealing with.
Yeah, I didn't have any problem with that.
Okay, so are you okay with that? Okay.
This is yet a difference from what you and I talked about the other day. Was it Monday a week ago? Is this
The third page is different because that's
right? The third page.
Right,
That's
but
what
he
I'm saying.
wants
that wasn't there when
right. He wants to
you-
stick with page 2.
Right.
So let me keep moving here. Tell us. I'm not sure in my mind. I'm clear when we call somebody the manager of IT versus director of IT. What's the distinction? Is it pay? Is it reporting lines? I mean, why? And you imply that if we do see Mr. Catron move to a different phase of his life, we may have to be hiring somebody, and you suggested it would be more prestigious or more attractive for somebody to take a director position rather than manager. Could you explain that to me and maybe somebody else that doesn't really understand that, why manager versus director is such an important distinction?
We have to go back to 2015, the reorganization, and a former county commissioner proposed that there be 4 directors, and every other department would report to one of these director positions. There was the director of administrative services, the director of community development, the director of community services, and the director of
EMA, Homeland?
no.
Public Works.
Public Works, yeah. Missing one. And so that was how things were lined up. So if you had the title of director, but you weren't one of the 4 directors, then your title obviously had to get changed. And so that's when the director of recreation, the director of IT, the director of human resources, their titles were changed to manager of those respective areas because they weren't one of the 4 directors. Prior to 2015, in those positions, recreation, IT, and HR, they were directors just because of the way we were organized.
Did that change their pay or their reporting chain of command?
It did change the reporting chain of command, and no one received a pay decrease, but the grades were changed. And so at that time, I believe most of the department heads were the same grade back in 2015.
That's correct.
Yeah, the department heads are the same grade, and that realigned the grades. With the directors, that was before we had an assistant county manager position, so the directors were at 1 grade, and then the other positions were at grades below that.
So why is it important for you now, on page 2, Bob, to have these titles changed to Director of IT and to Director of Human Resources?
Because I believe that the word it's now, based on the consultant, the title, the word manager or director has no impact on where they fall
On the pay grade?
on the pay grade.
Right.
So it's not that issue. But I believe, and Mr. Catron and Ms. Reed, since their respective areas might be able to weigh in better than I can, I just believe that the title director professionally is when you're climbing up the ladder or when you're transitioning from one job to another, you want to be a director rather than a manager. It has more weight to it in the professional world.
And I understand that, the implication of the title. To me, it sounds more prestigious. But as I look at page 3, which is the suggestion made by, as I understand, Commissioner O'Neill and Commissioner O'Quinn, if they remain in the manager role, they report to the assistant county manager. Tell me about the implications of that. Why could they not be a director and report to the assistant county manager, or does that make any difference at all? I just don't, I'm not really understanding why the chain of command would have an implication and a bearing on whether you're called a manager or director.
I don't know that it necessarily would.
Does it have to be as page 3 if they're manager versus director? And why would you prefer to have the directors report directly to you?
Well, the primary reason, and I know there's been some chatter about this as well, emails and social media chatter, but the primary reason is currently the assistant county manager, even though she has 3 people reporting to her: the communications manager, the recreation manager, and the animal control manager. Those 3 responsibilities in itself take a great deal of her time. But what you don't see on the organizational chart is all the other responsibilities that Ms. Downs has. She's assigned to special projects. And I could list the special projects, but the special projects takes a great deal of her time. And it's important to me that she's able to continue with that. And my concern would be by giving her 2 other departments to supervise, that she, her ability to continue to focus attention on the special projects, not only that I have, but the Board of Commissioners have. Primarily, the things she focuses on are the special projects that the Board of Commissioners have, like the grant from the state, the $2.5 million grant for the shoreline protection.
Right.
Like the grant we have to study the shoreline protection, the special projects with the Department of Transportation, and the list goes on.
Right.
That each of those individual special projects, if you will, take a great deal of her time. And I don't want to diminish her ability, because those are important issues to the county.
That makes sense to me. You just don't see it on the organizational
No,
chart,
sir.
and I'm glad you brought those up, because I'm well aware of all those projects as they impact District 2, particularly.
If we can,
Go ahead.
to try to get into the mind of the previous commission on having 4 directors, was that to, in effect, try to streamline government? Was it in effect to try to cut cost? Can you enlighten me a little bit on what the thought processes were to limit us to 4 directors?
I don't believe it was to cut costs. I believe that the goal was to streamline government, to make it more efficient, to provide fewer direct reports to the county manager. The original proposal was to have a public safety director position. And in fact, the original vote was to create a public safety position, but the board later discussed that in more detail and chose to not have the director of public safety, retitled that director of community services. But I think that was the goal, to make it more efficient.
Yeah. So, in your opinion then, that did not accomplish the goals that it set out to do? It left voids, or that we would be going back away from that at this point?
Well, we went back away from it a year ago when the board, when Chief Powell was director of community services, and he became police chief, and that gave us an opportunity to revisit the director of community services. And so I recommended to the board that that position be changed to assistant county manager. What that did was the fire chief and E&A director, who reported to the director of community services at the time, then started reporting to the county manager, who prior to 2015, the fire chief did report to the county manager. And then the manager for animal control, recreation manager, reported to the assistant county manager position. The public works director hasn't changed. The director of community development hasn't changed. And so, again, when the director of administrative services resigned, it provided me an opportunity to revisit that position. Back in 2015, we didn't have a director of administrative services. And the goal was, again, to try to, make it more efficient, like we mentioned a minute ago. But, try things and see if they work. And I believe that in concept, in theory, the director of administrative services, I've seen it work in other places, but I just don't believe in actuality and practicality that the director of administrative services was able to give finance all the attention that finance needs.
And I agree with you on that 100%.
And again, that's the reason for the proposed change.
Just to give a little background on the suggestions that we made on draft 3, if you would, it was to see if we could accomplish the goals that we wanted to accomplish without having to increase payroll. And that's why we were looking at structuring that. And Mr. Hours was going to talk to Ms. Downs about, workload if we shifted to that proposal, and how that would work out. But, yeah, we were looking at it from a, strictly monetary kind of structure, if we could save the county some money.
Well, I guess my concern about trying to save the county money is that we're not bringing these critical personnel up to the 50 percentile in pay grade, which I think is an insult personally. You know, for a county like ours not to be able to pay people at that level of responsibility and service to the county, not 50%. I mean, to me, it's an absurdity, but I guess that's just the way I feel. What about you, Bob? Do you have any questions for Mr. Hours about why he wants to do this?
Well, I mean, the other day, we actually said 51.6. This change would be the 51.6, and then you compared that to, what would you say, it was 114 on the...
If everybody was moved to the midpoint, yes, sir.
Right, everybody moved to the midpoint, so it was a difference in 51.6 and 114,000 change.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you can't argue with the fact that we are saving a few bucks, but just don't want to run off anybody either. So.
And that was the thing that we were looking at. You know, if we could save 51,000, I wanted to save it, but it was a study. It wasn't. I was asking him to look at it, not trying to force it. But if we can, I don't have a problem in endorsing Mr. Hours' recommendation, but I did want to look at it before we did it blind.
Any other questions? Bob?
I'm good.
Wayne, are you good? Any other questions, Mr. Hours? Any other points to be made? Anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
So moved to, could you read number 2 just for the record, please? To authorize.
It's on the back of it.
Third sheet. There it is.
Yeah, just read the motion on the agenda, just for the record, if you wouldn't mind.
Got it.
To authorize the reorganization. There you go.
All right, recommended motion, Personnel Committee.
Number 2 right there.
Oh, okay. Consider authorizing the reorganization of county departments and the reclassification of department head positions.
Make a motion to accept
Make a
that.
motion to that effect.
Great. We have a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor? 3-0. Thank you very much. Number 3, consider reclassifying one part-time community service officer position to a full-time programs analyst position. Chief Powell.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to come before you today and make this presentation. The police department is asking for consideration to reclassify one of our CSO positions to a full-time crime analyst position. And this is in line with a review that the department had conducted by IACP, which recommended that we actually have a crime analyst with the police department to review the information that we collect, the data that we take in every day, to identify trending, hot spotting, where crime is taking place, and try to be predictive so we can be proactive as opposed to being reactive to events that take place. Keeping in mind that, crime does trend, seasonal, there may be a particular area in the community that's being hit with burglaries or something like that. We can identify that, assign resources to it, and hopefully identify that. In order to do that, we're asking that what we want to do is take a lieutenant that we currently have that is assigned to training. She oversees all the training with the department right now. We want to take her and put her in working as a crime analyst, to start collecting the data, to identify it, to push it out to the patrol division and to investigations. to help us, once again, become proactive as opposed to being reactive. Also, we want to take the lieutenant right now who is assigned to doing professional standards, writing policies, procedures, certification for the department, take that lieutenant and transition that person over to the training division so we continue with our training for the officers. And we want to backfill the procedure person with this new position, or this position that we're asking to be upgraded. Mr. Steve Starnowski has an excellent resume that was attached for your review. His whole work history has been involved in exactly what we're asking to do. He's been involved in a review of policies and procedures, developing policy and procedures, and working, in law enforcement to help officers do a better job and to become more effective. And we think it will be a great fit in the use of his skill talents to help the police department to achieve their goals and become better providing service to the community.
So a lot of moving parts is what you're saying.
Well, a lot of moving parts,
Okay.
but we think it's needed, and also once again I want to lean back on the IACP report. We're trying to meet some of the recommendations that was made because we think it's critical. We think it would be beneficial, not just for the operations of the department, but also to help us become more efficient.
This is something we don't have at all right now.
We do not have a crime analyst with the department. That crime analyst will work hand in hand with the city's crime analyst that they have. But once again, it's something that we know we need. We're trying to get there, and we're trying to do it in the most efficient manner as possible.
So my understanding is there's a great deal of software out there that can actually create algorithms that play right into the predictive nature of behaviors based upon past performance and whatnot.
That is correct.
Do we have any of that?
We do have the availability to use it with the systems that we have in place. As a matter of fact, John Cantron and I have talked about it in the past, and we think that this helps us once again be more efficient.
Right.
Because we use the information we already collect, and we identify trending, we identify crime patterns, and using past experience, we try to predict what's going to happen in the future.
So that's what I'm asking. The new position you're creating, would that individual work with the more sophisticated software available to achieve the goals that they are asked to achieve?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's what the crime analyst position would be.
Yeah, but you have, if we need to support you with updated, newer software, please ask.
And we will, but we feel like we have the tools in place now
That's what I'm asking.
to do
Right.
what we have to do.
Good. So remind me, Mr. Sarnowski will be doing exactly what?
Now, Mr. Sarnowski will fill the position of doing the policies, the procedures.
Okay.
Because my training as a department head has been not to pull sworn officers off the road and tie them up and working in office. We want to keep police officers doing just that. We want to keep them out there answering calls for service, investigating cases, and solving crime. And we're trying to get away from the trending of having officers tied up in the office and trying to civilianize it where we can. Mr. Sarnowski's position will be a non-sworn position, will be a civilian position.
He has an incredible resume.
Yes, sir.
Why the heck does he want to do this?
I've actually got him with us today.
Why do you want to do that with all this? From Boy Scout to 06 to this, what the heck? Eagle Scout, I should say. What I really think is going to help you the most is that you're part of the Association of Approved Basketball Referees, and you know how to call fouls. Because we need somebody to be able to do that around here.
Take a little bit of abuse from
All right, good. You guys have any questions for Chief? Mr. Howard?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, when Chief Powell submitted his budget request for fiscal year 20, he requested a crime analyst position and 6 officer positions. And Chief Powell and I discussed his request for officer positions and the crime analyst position at length. And at the time, although not to say that additional officer positions are not needed. But at the time, I believe that the argument for crime analyst position outweighed the argument for the 6 additional officer positions. I believe that crime analyst position will help our existing officers be more efficient and effective in what they currently do, rather than just adding additional police officers. Adding additional personnel is not always a solution. Adding money to a problem is not always a solution. Notwithstanding our revenue situation in developing this year's budget, I would have recommended the crime analyst position. I believe it has the potential of being a very valuable position for the county, and the potential for being a game changer for our ability to analyze the data that is out there. I mean, we all know that analytics is where today's world is at, and the successful organizations, the ones that do an excellent job, are the ones that analyze analytics, the data, and that data can help organizations get to the next level. And I believe that the crime analyst position, as Chief Powell's outlined, would have a significant impact on the police department and our ability to achieve the goal of making Glynn County a safer community.
So Chief also mentioned the AICP report. Are we looking at that information and checking boxes as we
Yes,
go
sir.
along to move forward with our
Absolutely.
recommendations? This is just one of
Yes, sir.
those. Questions, Bob? Wayne? Anybody? Motion?
I move to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve the reclassification of one community service office position to programs analyst over professional standards.
Second.
All in favor? 3-0. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, sir. Okay, any other issues to discuss? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.